Welcome to Uncaged. Today we're speaking with Hayden Janssen. Hayden has an incredible background in terms of working with businesses and getting them shifted so that they know how to embrace these things and how those things are going to impact every aspect of their business, including their culture. We're going to get into all of that in a second. Before we delve there, though, Hayden, tell us a little bit about you and your career.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity, Vance. So I was born in Kansas. I've lived in about a dozen different states and countries. I'm a big outdoors person, competitive trail runner, fly fisher, cyclist, a big volunteer in local communities. I think that building community really helps strengthen and support the values of where we live and supporting that. From a professional background, I work on primarily scaling growth and operations. I identify business opportunities and untapped markets, a lot of go-to-market initiatives and strategic marketing plans. I enjoy trend analysis and working in identifying where growth opportunities can be pursued. And recently, a lot of my focus has been on tech and the possibilities that and risks that it can bring to a company, and working with my clients to help them understand that. My background is quite diverse. I've worked in state government as a grant writer, project manager, community organizer, worked in nonprofits as a leader for environmental restoration projects, private sector environmental consultant. Most recently, I was chief operating officer and helped guide a private software company through the M&A process to help them secure PE funding. And right now I'm working to freelance and provide my expertise to companies that need assistance in navigating tech adoption, organizational growth, and other process items.
Now, I know a hot button issue right now is AI, generative AI, artificial intelligence in every form or fashion. I don't think that there's probably a business or a business leader that doesn't have that on the agenda in some form or fashion. But tell us a little bit about what you're seeing and what customers are looking for right now.
Yeah, no, AI is definitely the elephant in the room for 2024. I think it's gonna take off. So a lot of things I'm focused on researching are around risk reward of AI. So ensuring that people are informed before they jump on the Chat GPT bandwagon or adopt another generative AI solution or tool. We can just go through some of the risks that we're seeing and hearing from clients. Obviously, number one risk is bias. So whatever the human inputs into that is gonna impact the output. Another big risk right now that we're seeing is IP ownership. So you see recently the New York Times has sued OpenAI because their content is being used in generative AI. There's a really good article this past week in the New Yorker from Louis Manan talking about how the US Patent and Trademark Office is making a decision, hopefully in the early part of this year, on what IP ownership will mean as it pertains to AI.
That's
Through
really
risks and
interesting, by the way. I've thought a lot about that myself because, just my own explorations into the field. What the New York Times and what other authors claim is true. You'll see vast volumes of data just regurgitated, and it's not necessarily wrong. I mean, I almost feel like what the technology is doing is right. It's gathering stuff together, it's piecing and parsing what has the most authority, and it makes sense. The challenge, though, is that it just doesn't cite anything, right?
Exactly. So if you wanted to go and you wanted to go to the source of a New York Times article, you're going to have to pay to get past a firewall or a
Yeah.
paywall in order to access that information. Yet if you
Mm.
input content into ChatGPT, I'll choose them for now, it will actually pull out that content, and the author of that content will have no financial compensation for their creation. So I think
Mm.
when we look from a key component of AI really is to use copyrighted materials to emulate human authorship and really create content. That's
Yeah.
one component of AI. So how do we navigate ensuring A, that it's not misrepresented or misinterpreted, and B, that the authors of that content are compensated and recognized for that?
I wrote a very cute, like, little story thing about a raccoon, and it was using ChatGPT to help me write it, and it came back with a really lovely like story. And I shared it with a friend, and she said, "Yeah, this is a great story. It was actually written 20 years ago by." It was one of those ones where I was like, "Oh, okay, so maybe
Exactly.
ChatGPT is not as amazing as I thought." But The clearly for AI, data is critical. And I imagine that when you and the companies that you work with and support are looking at AI, you're trying to figure out how to manage the data question for AI. I mean, how does it shift and how does it maybe impact the way data is collected, processed, synthesized, and presented?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So when we look at the rewards of what AI can provide, I have some friends that work with CRISPR and the ability that it has to analyze massive data sets in a fraction of the time that would take humans. I know that you had a Neda Razavi on the show earlier this year, and she talked about the cancer research work that they're able to do using AI. There's definitely rewards that can be identified there. I think it's upfront important to express what your intent is of collecting the data so that you understand how best to collect the data. And then once you've collected the data, I work with our clients to understand, is there a way in which there's an indirect benefit to that data? Is there a way to monetize any point of that data or to catalyze that into something else that wasn't your direct intent of the data capture? And that's going to help you evolve your thinking of how not only you're collecting the data, but how you're processing, maybe refining and or reselling or sharing that data to help a rising tide, lift all boats. We can share that information. I think it's going to be very important.
Now, I mean, Hayden, as I mentioned, I kick off every year at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, and I had a whirlwind of meetings there with companies that seem to be launching a variety of new software technologies that answer every solution under the sun. But, sometimes that gets to be really overwhelming. And we all need to kind of embrace these things to move things forward for progress. But I
Mhm.
mean, what should we be thinking about and what kind of risks do you think exist when we think about this technological market and how we embrace it?
No, that's extremely important. In fact, risk is the number one thing that I work with our clients on understanding, both direct risk and potential ancillary risk. So when we talk about communicating security risks, if we're going to adopt a bolt-on, first we need to understand that's not going to be a panacea for everything that we want solved. It's not going to solve all of our market level problems. What it is it offers us an opportunity to utilize a tool to help improve either productivity, efficiency, maybe even just our employee experience, our customer experience, right? But we need to understand what risk reward that is entailing. So if we're going to adopt something, what are the security risks it's now exposing us to? One of the big questions I had for our clients early on a couple of years ago when ChatGPT was becoming a hot button item was information that you put into OpenAI, who now owns that content? And
Yeah.
most of them, unfortunately, couldn't respond. So if they were using it and leveraging that tool in a professional environment, they were potentially sharing information, CI, that they maybe shouldn't be sharing and putting into an open AI generator. Now, there are
Hmm.
new solutions which allow for separate walls to be set up to contain that information, but security and understanding where your data is going to be processed is extremely important. And we just want to make sure that clients are aware that when that data is shared, sometimes they let go of it and that data becomes the property, if you will, of someone else.
Yeah, I mean, definitely need to make sure that we manage and navigate correctly to avoid those problems and to minimize the risks.
Mhm.
But I mean, Hayden, you mentioned that you're a fly fisherman up front. I love that. Over the holidays, I was able to go fishing here down in the Keys, and it just was the best experience. And so I can see that you love the outdoors, and probably, as I've been told, you've been active in environmental and social issues. And certainly, there's not a company out there that's not thinking in some form or fashion about how they prepare for this sustainable future that we're going for and how we're moving that forward. How are you finding supporting leaders to make that transition to a more sustainable way of thinking?
Yeah, so one area that's for my primary focus right now is understanding how AI can impact company culture. So we don't want to have an ethical fading where mission, vision, and values go by the wayside because we want to progress and be more competitive or the most competitive we can. So that's a conversation that I'm having with executives at their level saying, these are the risks and rewards of AI. You need to
Mhm.
be informed of what they are. Now let's take a look at your mission, vision, values. What do your employees hold valuable, why they work here? What do your customers hold valuable? Why do they work with you? Why do they buy your app, your widget, your product? Are you going to sacrifice any of that in the name of tech adoption? So that's
Hmm.
one item. I was very happy to read the other day about some work that's being done with Leo Prieto's group, Lemu in South America, pardon me, where he's created a warehouse, essentially a marketplace where investors can go and they can find firms that are focused on the climate and biodiversity and water and human development, and they can choose to invest in them that way. So he's created that using AI, and he just takes a fraction of the proceeds that come in, and the remainder of it actually goes to these good causes that help, sustainability and environmental causes.
Yeah, I love the way you're thinking about it, which is really kind of embracing the best of AI and applying it to some of these challenges to be more efficient. It's a key thing, and I know that leaders around the country and around the world need that advice, that consultation. But, here we are, we find ourselves in 2024, and I know that in Davos this year, everyone was talking about AI in some form or fashion. I mean, what are you seeing on the docket for this year?
I think what's important is understanding how we can approach AI and ensure that it doesn't widen the gap, the socioeconomic gap. So ensuring that it's accessible, that it levels a playing field to a certain extent, and doesn't create a further divide between the haves and the have-nots. So there's been technologies that have been adopted throughout time. Say it'd be the telegraph, the telephone, the television, the computer, that these advanced specific groups faster than others. When we look at AI and the impacts that can have socioeconomically, I think we just need to be cautious and understand how we can move forward together and ensure that we're not driving off a cliff at the end. We understand what the risks are, and maybe we build a bridge across that cliff at the end to the other side, or we put a curve in the road, and when we go around the road, we say, "Thank goodness we didn't go off that cliff. Look what that disaster would have looked like," right? So
Yeah.
there are definite socioeconomic implications to the adoption of technology, AI being the hot button one right now. So ensuring that there's access is going to be really paramount, and then ensuring that people understand what the risks and rewards are when we talk about the adoption of technology.
Hayden, if someone wanted to reach out to you and learn more about what you're working on and talk about really, I'd say, how AI can play a positive effect in transforming and transitioning these companies, where's the best place to find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Hayden Janssen. That's HaydenJanssen, or on X, formerly known as Twitter, Hayden T for Thomas Janssen. So either one of those, you can look me up and be happy to engage with you.
Well, it's been really great talking with you, Hayden. And I feel like the synthesis for me is that you see a way that we can balance the forward thinking with some of these issues that have to be dealt with, and really kind of being practical about how we embrace technologies like AI in a way that supports these efforts to, one, keep the economy going, keep people employed, and hopefully improve the balance between economic success and environmental safety. So, Hayden, thank you so much for being on the show today, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Cheers.